All so much for coming out. As a lot of you know, my name is Isabelle Sander. I am a senior here at UW-Platteville. My majors are theater and there we go. My majors are theater and English professional writing. I am a middle child. Today, my younger sister is here with us. She's waving too well. I'm from Cuba City, Wisconsin, which is just about 15 minutes away from here. And I've worn hearing aids since I was 7 years old. So I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of background about my journey with my hearing loss and my diagnosis and all of that before we kind of get into the Q&A and me sharing some of my experiences specifically here on campus. So when I was young, my parents originally thought I was blind, not deaf, because I would sit like inches away from the television with the volume all the way up. And so they had my vision checked and all of that, and everything came back clear. But then I went to first grade. And if you know me, you know I hate getting in trouble so much. It makes my skin crawl. I don't like thinking about it. But in first grade, we started having recess where we were allowed to go out past where the playgrounds were a little further. And I stopped coming in from recess. And my teachers were like, man, this doesn't make any sense. Isabelle sobs every time she gets in trouble, and yet she won't come in when it's time to come in for recess. So then they started thinking about it, and they were like, maybe we should get our hearing checked. So we did. And turns out that I have hearing loss in both of my ears. However, it wasn't a little bit until we found out the reason why I had hearing loss. So we went to lots of doctor's visits up to the Milwaukee Children's Hospital. And my dad and I had lots of adventures on the Skywalk, and I was Isabelle Skywalker. That's a good memory. But in January of 2008, we finally got a diagnosis, and they told my mom and dad that I was being diagnosed with LVAS. So what that stands for is enlarged vestibular aqueduct syndrome, which is basically I have a picture for you. There's lots of different terms for it, but the one I use is LVAS. So there is the vestibular aqueduct is here, and the endolymphatic sac. And basically, there's fluid that is in your ear that helps with things like balance and hearing and all of that. And the size of a normal person's is the equivalent to like a pencil lead, like a mechanical pencil lead, if you can visualize that. However, mine is about the size of a mechanical pencil itself. Big difference, right? So that causes different issues, which I'll get into some of the symptoms later. But that was the diagnosis that we were given when I was 7 going on 8. This is a picture here. This is the EVAS one, and this is a normal aqueduct. So you can kind of see the difference there if the visualization wasn't enough. So some of these symptoms that are included with LVAS, EVAS, my diagnosis, the sudden fluctuating or progressive sensorineural hearing loss. So what that basically means in layman's terms is my hearing can shift at any point in my day, in a week, and I essentially could lose my hearing at any moment. And some of my friends here have been with me when I've experienced that, and it's pretty scary. However, I've lived with this my whole life, and we have found ways to cope with it. My family has helped me through that. There's also the chance of a drastic change in hearing following a minor head injury. Basically, any sort of pressure change, head trauma. So when the weather changes, sometimes my hearing fluctuates. They told me if I lifted too much weight, that could also cause it. Things like natural childbirth, Those are all things that I have been told might affect my hearing. However, in recent years, because LVAS is a newer diagnosis, these things are subject to change. So I've been told that there's a chance that nothing would happen to my hearing if I, flew in a plane, for example. However, because there's not a lot of information on that yet, there's precautions that we have to take. And so when talking to my doctors, they were telling me that when I'm thinking about trying some of these things that in the past they thought might affect my hearing, we need to make sure that my hearing is stable on its own for about 8 months. And recently, I had applied to do a study abroad for my theater major, and that would entail getting on a plane and going to London. Unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago now, I did have a drastic change in my hearing and will no longer be attending. So that's just a little glimpse into what life is like for me with LVAS. There are 2 other symptoms that are associated with LVAS. It's vertigo, balance problems, dizziness, that sort of stuff. I don't get that super bad, but then tinnitus, the ringing of the ears, I do get pretty bad. And that, sometimes I won't wear my hearing aids because, as I'll get into later, my hearing aids don't necessarily fix my hearing, and when I'm having a lot of tinnitus, they actually make things worse. So these are just some of the symptoms that I know people who have LVAS experience, or that I experience myself. So these are just some fun facts. I thought I'd leave these up here while I talk to you guys a little bit more. I'm going to come out from behind the lectern because I feel like I'm in a little cage back there and I don't like it. So I'm trying to think of some other examples of how I've adjusted to my life with LVAS, things that my friends are aware of, or some funny stories, because it's not all doom and gloom. My hearing is something that I'm proud of, and it's something that makes me who I am. So I have my first story that I was thinking of was this past weekend, I was attending homecoming events. And one of those events was the lighting of the M. And I'm not sure if you are all aware, but there are fireworks with the lighting of the M. And something about me is I can't hear fireworks. So try to imagine that, watching a fireworks show and having no idea why everyone's so excited, because it's a little different if you can't hear it. So my friends, when they found this out, took it upon themselves to explain to me what fireworks sound like. I got lots of interesting explanations. You know, the ones that, like, there's a big burst and then they, like, sizzle down? They explained that to me as though, pins and needles when your leg falls asleep? They were like, that's what that sounds like. And I'm like, oh, I can visualize that now. Or pop rocks. That was another one I got. And then my favorite was boom. So that was one of my favorite stories. I don't think he's with us tonight, but my friend Cameron, who works with me, had known me since I was in preschool, so before I was diagnosed with LVAS, and had never been with me a single time when I lost my hearing completely, which is crazy to me and slipped my mind in the moment. So we were at work, and I was sitting there, and we were having a conversation. I turned around to do some more work, and then I lost my hearing. So I turned around and I looked at him, and I was like, hey, Cameron, I can't hear anything. And then I turned back around and kept working. Because for me, it's my daily life. It happens every so often, and I didn't think anything of it. Cameron, as you might expect, started to panic. And he turns around and he's like, what do you mean? And then realizes I can't hear him. So he comes over, and we got things sorted out. I got an appointment with my audiologist that day. Obviously, I'm hearing again today, so everything did work out in the end. I know we have a lot of education majors here, so I wanted to share some stories from my experiences in education, both good and not so good. So growing up in a smaller town, I'm from Cuba City, like I said, I had a really good support system, like one of the best. I had special education directors that had my back with everything. I had representatives from CISA, very near and dear to my heart, Bobby Jo Edwards. She really helped me through everything. They made sure that I was prepared for everything. And by everything, I mean I can tell you exactly what type of hearing loss I have and the different decibels that I can hear and all of that. And that is really great knowledge to know until you are talking to a room of people who don't know what any of it means. So I learned early on how to advocate for myself. That being said, I didn't really have to in my elementary years and my high school years because I had that team and I was invited to go to my IEP meetings, and my teachers would communicate with me and say, is this working? They would pull me aside after class and say, is there anything else I can be doing for you? Is there something that you need me to change? And that was really great. But when I moved on to college, it was a completely different realm. I didn't see these people every single day. I didn't have anybody warning them from the year before and checking in on me every day. I had my lovely team at SSWD who checked in on me, but they're not there every day either. So I did run into some issues, primarily during the pandemic. So we all know we were wearing masks, and as someone who reads lips at 98% accuracy, you can imagine how that affected my ability to communicate with others. So I went through the first semester pretty easy. We started trying out clear masks, seeing what worked, what didn't. When we had classes that were split between in-person and Zoom, I would always be in person, sitting in the front, doing what I could. The second semester that I had during post-shutdown, I didn't really have any issues either. I actually was able to perform in a show where all of my counterparts would wear clear masks the entire show, so that I was able to read their lips. And there was a lot of support those first 2 semesters. But then my third semester where we were wearing masks, I ran into an issue where there was a professor that didn't want to wear a clear mask. And that was tough. That was really hard. SSWD did everything they could. They got me closed captioning, although with a mask that's ill-fitting, it's hard to pick up what people are saying regardless. And so that only went so far. So the point in that story is to urge all of you education majors out there to listen to your students. They're not asking anything of you in order to embarrass you or in order to put some power over you. They're doing it because they want to learn. And not every student is going to be as up front with you as I am. Like I said, the way I was raised and the way I was supported in my youth, I have those tools and that ability to go to you and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this one thing. Please help me. Not all students are going to do that. So if you get an accommodation that comes in and you have questions about it, make sure you ask. Make sure you clarify so that you can provide these students the education that they deserve. And I know that all of you are not education majors. So I wanted to talk about something that I've been seeing going around on the internet. There's TikTok now, and I don't use it a lot, but every once in a while I'll open the app and I'll look at it, and I get on, is it called your For You page? Yeah? Okay. I get on my For You page where, because I'm part of the DHH community, I get some of these videos that are kind of giving tips and tricks on how to interact with people who are in the DHH community. Some of them are very helpful. Like, my roommate, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this story. Last night we were chatting, and she's like, I learned some false signs. Do you want to see them? And so that stuff is really useful. However, I had an incident where somebody sent me a video of a small child, like an infant, a toddler, somewhere around there, interacting with their deaf parent. So some of you might know that it's hard to get attention of someone who can't hear you. It is not appropriate to bang on a table in order to get someone's attention because you know that they'll feel the vibrations. That is used when there are CODAs, children of deaf adults, and that should be left to them. So when you see something on the internet and you're not really sure if it applies to you, find somebody in your life that you can ask. I'm always open to answering these questions because I know it can be an uncomfortable topic. That being said, I don't want you guys to think that I am giving you all of the ways to interact with people in the DHH community. I don't know everything. I'll be the first to tell you that. And I can tell you what I prefer, but the best way to interact with people in the DHH community or anyone who's differently abled is to ask. And ask in a way that they know you care about them and you want them to get the best. Do not ask in front of an entire group of people. That will be really uncomfortable for them and they might feel a little singled out. So I also wanted to touch on the fact that the DHH community extends far past those who are deaf or hard of hearing or hearing impaired. My family, technically, they are all a part of the DHH community. And so my next point is I'd like to urge you guys to think about the things that you say in your daily life because you never know who is around. I'm going to share a story about my little sister now. My sister and I are 14 months apart, and we are very close. She is my best friend. That wasn't always the case, but I know that she has always had my back. In middle school, we went from our middle school up to the high school for elective classes and gym class. Yeah. So we would all walk as a pack of middle schoolers over to the high school around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was. I, can't hear that well. And those group settings where we're walking outside where it might be windy were kind of tricky for me. However, my sister is not hearing impaired. I don't know if you guys know that. She's not. And my sister overheard a conversation between a girl and it was supposed to be me. But she was trying to get my attention and goes, "What are you, deaf?" to Helen Keller. See, that's not really appropriate to say. And I didn't hear it, so I couldn't do anything about it. My sister heard it, though. And she took care of it. So you just be conscious of the things that you say and how they might affect those around you. Those aren't nice things to say. They're not nice things to say about anyone, even if there's someone that's not in the DHH community that didn't hear you or was ignoring you for whatever reason. Try not to say, "What are you, deaf?" It's rude. That's my soapbox for the day. I wanted to give you guys a chance to ask me questions specifically about your interests. So I will open it up for that. If you want to hear about my experience with a specific thing, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking at you. Also, please use your microphones. If you have a question, you just press the button and then you talk into it. Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a theater major and a member of the DHH community?
Absolutely. So I actually wrote an entire article about this. You can find it on my LinkedIn. But I will give you the short version here. Obviously, with all of these challenges, obstacles that I have, because of my hearing, being in a performance major can be sort of a challenge. Um, I have adapted in ways that you might not think of when you see me on stage. Being that I could lose my hearing at any moment, I have timed out every show that I am in to make sure that I'd still be able to perform in case I were to lose my hearing. There are also things that I can't hear regardless of if I'm hearing or not, such as gunshots. We use a lot of gunshot noises in shows, and we found out early on I can't hear them. So I've developed different ways to react to those sounds that I might not be able to hear. In the show that we did last fall, A Lie of the Mind, there was one time in the show that I did need to react to it, and we devised that I would be holding on to another actor's arm at that point so that he could squeeze my hand to let me know that the gunshot went off. It does prove useful, though, when we have gunshots that I'm not supposed to react to, because I don't even know they happened. There's also some things, musicals are something that I've been a part of my entire life, back to, 5. And as I've gotten older, they've gotten a little more difficult. Obviously, my hearing is progressive, so I lose my hearing over time. And with that, I have needed to take a step back and reevaluate why I do theater. And it's not because I want to have that moment of fame. It's not because of any of that. It's because I love what I do and I want to impact people. And so that is something that primarily in musicals that I have to keep in mind when looking at my future, my career, all of that fun stuff. Yes, Nathan?
Are there classroom practices or activities that you found particularly difficult with your hearing impairment?
Yes. Telephone. Don't ever play telephone with me. I'm really bad at it. Group work can be difficult for me because, like I said, hearing aids don't fix the problem. They just help. Hearing aids are literally amplification devices. And so when there's multiple groups in one room talking, I can't hear anything because it's picking up everything at the same level. So keeping that in mind, I would ask to leave the room. I still ask to leave the room if we're doing group work. My group goes into the hallway. But thinking about that as a teacher is important because not every kid's going to ask, and you want them to feel included. Something that came along with my hearing impairment was I couldn't play sports. I can't get hit in the head, obviously. So that's how I found theater. I got into the arts instead of sports. But a lot of times we would have game days or fun days, and everyone would go outside and be like, oh, let's play kickball. You can keep score. Or dodgeball. That's not fun either because I can't play dodgeball. A lot of those activities that require physical activity, don't ever ask your student if they want to keep score. If they want to keep score, they'll ask you. It's embarrassing. Coming from someone who did it for 18 years. I also wore a red bike helmet, which only furthered the problem, but is what it is, I suppose. I am going to touch on something else while you guys think of more questions. I know it's really exciting when you learn sign language. I know. I get excited. I show everyone. However, not every person in the DHH community uses ASL. I was actually taught something called PSE, Pigeon Signed English. And I wasn't aware of that until I started researching it for a sociolinguistics class that I took last year. So basically, a lot of public schools will teach their students Pigeon Signed English instead of ASL because the grammatical format of PSE is more similar to English. But they don't want to teach you exact signed English because then you won't be able to understand people who use ASL. So it's one of those things that you have to use your discretion. If you know that person uses ASL, or you know they use PSE or exact sign English, any of those, that is totally fine. But never, ever, ever walk up to someone that you don't know, that you know has a hearing impairment or is deaf or something of that sort, and start signing to them. It can get really awkward really fast for everyone involved.
Do you ever still get frustrated with the fact that you lose your hearing? Like, sometimes does it still, like, bother you and get on your nerves?
Absolutely. So when I found out that I couldn't go to London because I lost my hearing a couple weeks ago, I cried a lot. A lot. I think I sobbed for probably 3 days. It sucks. I won't sugarcoat that. It does suck. But not all of it sucks. And that's something I have to keep in mind. I have to remind myself every single day that I have grown so much as a person, and I have met so many cool people. Fun fact, I opened for Temple Grandin once. Do you guys know who Temple Grandin is? That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And I never would have had that opportunity if I didn't have this hearing impairment. So, yes, of course I get frustrated. I can't tell you how frustrated I was that semester because I'll let you know a little secret. The class that I was taking that my professor wasn't accommodating me was one of my favorite classes that I was looking forward to so much because it was something I was so passionate about, and that chance and that opportunity was taken from me because I can't hear. And that will never cease to be frustrating. However, that's why I do what I do. That is why I'm here talking to you, to hopefully make the world a little better and a little easier for those who have differing abilities. And you might notice that I don't use disability because I feel like that connotation that is gained over the years isn't something that I quite identify with. And I can do anything I put my mind to, except here.
Yeah, I got a good one. What is the worst interpretation of signs? So if someone signed something to you and you went, "What?" or they thought they were saying something to you and it was completely different.
Do you really want me to answer that?
Oh yeah, come on.
Okay. So he asked what the worst interpretation of a sign was, or somebody who was learning a sign that tried to sign something to me that I didn't understand, or they mispronounced or missigned. So it's actually about you. So that's Connor. Connor is my boyfriend, and he started learning sign language in order to, I don't know, prepare, support, all of the above. And in the process of learning how to sign, he didn't quite know the differences between hand positions. So we were at Country Kitchen, and I signed, "Thank you." The correct response would be, "You're welcome." That's not what he signed. He signed a different word that turns the hand. And I don't know if you guys know what that is. If you don't, look it up. I'm not going to say it. We'll leave it at that. Yeah. What do you guys want? Stories? Advice? Oh, Sophia's not going to actually ask a question because she's scared of microphones. I don't know if you knew that about Sophie. She is terrified of speaking into a microphone. Instead, she signed what her question was to me because apparently that's how we operate. My family also, I'm going to tell this little quick story first. My family did not learn sign. They learned some signs, some necessary signs, such as bathroom. That's my favorite one to use. Sophia knows some profanity and likes to use this at me because she is my sister. But they would use my ability to lip read growing up. My siblings played sports growing up, And so we spent a lot of time in gymnasiums. And my dad could look at me from across the gym, sitting on opposite sides of the bleachers, and say, "Stop it." And I would go, "Yes, sir." Yes. So that's a fun story. My sister asked how I ordered food during the shutdown, during the height of the pandemic. Connor is saying it was him. It wasn't always him. But my mom made me a little sign that I would wear until I didn't want to wear it anymore that said, "I am hearing impaired. Please write down what you're saying to me." And then I would do the same because I got really anxious about having to communicate with people the one thing that I had relied on since I was born, before I was even diagnosed with LVAS, that was taken away from me. And so I would start typing out. I'd say, "Hi, I'm so sorry, I'm hearing impaired. It's really noisy in here and I can't hear you." And then I'd just pass it to them. And there was a lot of positive experiences with that. I still do that. If something's too noisy or if I lose my hearing, I'll just write it out. Or I'd make my sister or my boyfriend do it for me.
Sorry. What are some sounds that you've discovered over the years that you can't hear, that other people have maybe told you, or that things that you just didn't even realize made sound?
So my mom's probably favorite story to tell is that I walked out of the audiology office the first day that I ever had hearing aids and just about peed my pants. Not because I was excited, because I was scared. I had never heard a motorcycle before. And I was 7 going on 8. I was a couple months from being 8 years old. And we walked outside and there was a motorcycle running and I was like, "Mom, what's that? Are we gonna die?" So motorcycles was the first one we found out about. Fireworks, I can't hear. A lot of really low noises I can't hear. I struggle with hearing men with particularly deep voices. Everyone's looking at my bappa. Yeah. Or really high noises. So I have this like mid-range. So if you have like a mid-level voice, I'll hear you perfectly. If you have anything other than that, I'm gonna struggle. I can't hear airplanes, and I think that one is probably everyone in the theater department's favorite story, is because no one knew I couldn't hear airplanes, and we had a project where we were supposed to make up a play, and my group decided to include the sound of an airplane, but nobody found one. So instead, they were like, "Isabelle, just make the noise," because I was the one that reacted to it. And I was like, "Okay." I don't know what airplanes sound like. I thought I maybe did. I don't. I would do it for you, but I don't think you guys would be able to handle my talent. I can't hear thunder during thunderstorms. Bass guitars, which is why it's amazing that I know how to play it. A lot of percussion instruments, such as bass drums, stuff like that. I can't tune a timpani, but I can play the hell out of them. Sounds like that. Whistles are hit or miss with me. Trains, barges, those really loud noises that everyone reacts to, and everyone's reacting, and I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I have to react." I already said fireworks.
How about the building radio?
Yeah, no. So we have radios at my job that we wear around. And if you hit the button on the top, the little dial, it makes a really weird noise, apparently, because it's not on a channel that we're using. I didn't know that until I was moving something with Kelly Jo one day, and I bumped it, and I felt the vibration on my hip, and I went, "Is my radio making a weird noise?" I also can't hear the simplex panel, which proves to be a blessing. I don't know if you guys have been in the building when the simplex panel is going off. apparently it's not fun. I also can't hear a lot of alarms, smoke detectors, stuff like that. I just got another question.
Also, the radio station that's playing in the background, too.
No.
When Isabelle opens the building in the morning, the custodians have been in the building by themselves, so they crank the radio up as they're vacuuming and doing things. And I always know Isabelle opened because when I get there in the morning, the radio is really loud.
Yes. Yeah. I actually have a special alarm clock that shakes my bed. Sophie doesn't like that alarm clock. It shakes the whole house, apparently. But I can't hear alarms, and so I have to have that vibration. And it also makes a really loud, like, piercing noise. And for some reason, no matter what I do, it always goes off. It might be intentional. We would never tell Sophie that, though. Or Kubasta. You haven't heard it yet. I haven't turned it on yet. Soon. No.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so you kind of touched on it, but like, what have you gained from like being part of the community?
So I was part of a what would you even call it with Bobby? I don't know, program. Yeah, we'll go with program. Bobby would come to my school and teach me about the deaf and hard of hearing community, about my own hearing loss, should be a part of my IEPs, stuff like that. And because I was part of that program, I was invited to participate in activities with that program, which were a little confusing to me, I'm not going to lie. One of them was an outdoor picnic, which was fine. The other was bowling. I don't know if you guys can picture this, but put about 50 deaf or hard of hearing kids in a bowling alley, no one's going to be able to hear anything. It was still fun. But I met a lot of really amazing people through that program. I got my deaf name through that. A girl named Lily, she went to one of the schools for the deaf in Wisconsin. She gave me my deaf name, which is the sign for smile with an I. So I'll teach you guys that. Yeah. So now you know my deaf name. I met lots of amazing people with different hearing devices than I had. I learned all about Bajas. I learned about that's a bone-anchored hearing aid. I feel like I should. That's a disclaimer because of Baja Blast. There were people with CI, cochlear implants, all different types of assistive technology that I would never have experienced if I hadn't been a part of that program. I also learned a lot about other people's accommodations that they needed that weren't the same as my own. Because not every person who can't hear can't participate in sports. And I was so jealous that they would have a kickball tournament at these things. And they'd be like, do you want to keep score? No, I don't want to keep score. Like I said, I got to be an opening speaker for Temple Grandin. I spoke for my high school my sophomore year. I started this campaign, the Spread the Love campaign, in high school with Cuba City High School. Every year during homecoming, it just happened to be International Week of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and also my birthday. So they couldn't say no because it was my birthday. But that's where I started this. That's where I started this public speaking and this desire to educate people and promote awareness about the DHH community because it's cool. It is a cool group of people. And I hope every single one of you is able to meet someone in the DHH community and talk to them about their experiences. Pretty neat. Yeah.
Second question off that. Do you feel like you've gained like a superpower at all from like being hard of hearing?
No.
Like some skill that you've gained because of what you've gone through?
I didn't hear.
Some skill you've gained because you've been through like this.
I think I'm more empathetic to others. I definitely have gained the skills of being able to put myself in someone else's shoes and not pass judgment right away. My first thought when I had that situation where I wasn't accommodated in that class wasn't, gee, that sucks for me. It was, I wonder how I can communicate this differently that this person might understand me. Because I never know what people are going through. You never know what people are going through. You know, you might see me every day and be like, oh, she looks so happy. But if you saw me 3 weeks ago, there was probably a face that I was putting up because it's not always easy. You never know what other people are thinking and feeling. And so that is something that I'm always thinking about, is how I can make life just a little bit easier for the other person in every situation, because that's what I look for in people who I want to surround me. So, I think empathy. I also get really cool sparkly hearing aids, so.
Could you talk about subtitles, whether for classes or movies?
Absolutely. Guess what? If something says it's already captioned and it says auto-generated, don't use it. They suck. I still don't know what's going on in that video. Thankfully, I have SSWD that if my professor has a video they want to show in class and it's not captioned already, you can send it to them and they'll get a caption for you. We've had some instances where the captioning hadn't gone through yet, and then we made plans accordingly. And I would just make up that assignment. But auto-generated captions are almost worse because I'm trying to pick out what is being said. Especially in those videos where you can't see someone talking. Captions are so helpful because how can I explain this to you? I don't know that I've ever explained this sensation. Do any of you wear glasses? Can you guys think about when you're not wearing your glasses? How difficult it is. Like, you might be able to make something out, but it's not quite right. That's what it's like when you take my captions away. Because those videos, if I'm not talking to that person, if I'm not seeing their face at all times, it's really hard. And I get really tired because I'm trying to pick out all of those things. And then it's like when you watch something in a different language, this is a good way to put it. If you're watching something in a different language and you have captions on and you have to sit there and read the captions, by the end of the movie, you're probably tired and you don't want to read anything else, right? It's kind of like that, but with my ears. Because when in any language, if I don't have captions, I'm doing that extra work of trying to decode what I'm hearing because. So, if you think about a sentence and you take out every vowel and like every fourth consonant, how hard do you think it is to figure out what that sentence says? Almost impossible. Pretty hard. And that's what it's kind of like trying to decode what people are saying to me a lot of the times. Kelly Jo knows, if you're not looking at me, I'm probably not going to understand what you said. She and I share an office because I'm the student operations coordinator. And her laptop sits right where her mouth is in my eye line. And so she's constantly bringing her laptop down so that I can read her lips, because then she doesn't have to repeat herself 4 times. I got really fortunate because my boyfriend also needs captions, not because he can't hear, but just because he's weird. And so we both had that issue where everyone's like, why do we have to have captions? Like, everyone's always like, I don't want captions. It ruins my experience. But I'm lucky because he doesn't care. But that's another thing. Think about what you're saying. If there's a movie or a video on in class or not in class, just hanging out with someone, and you say, do we need captions? That's probably going to make the person who needs them feel really bad. I know from personal experience that it sucks when somebody says that. So.
You keep saying SSWD, and some people might not know what that is. And talk a little bit about our college search, because we found out a lot of information that private schools don't have to honor IEPs.
That's a great question, Mom. Thank you. So SSWD stands for Services for Students with Disabilities. That is a mouthful, so I always say SSWD. Yes, as I was touring colleges, that was something that we really had to look into. Who was going to give me the accommodations that I needed? Who was, legally obligated to? Who had good programs that were going to be that support system that I needed? I toured a couple of private colleges, and they don't have to honor IEPs or 504s. Is that what they are? Yeah. Stuff like that. Yep. So that was something I really had to take into consideration when picking my university that I was going to attend. There are some really, really great services for students with disabilities programs in the UW system. Some of the best in my experience. And like I said, I'm very fortunate to have been able to meet with the SSWD team and talk to them and be guaranteed that they were going to be able to support me through my years here at UW-Platteville.
What's your favorite memory that you have with SSWD?
I was a peer mentor for their Pioneer Access Orientation. And I was great. I was not great when I went through the program. I was new to college, wanted to, live life on the edge or something, I was a little brat. I didn't show up when I was supposed to. I was kind of a little turd. But then I turned around, and they asked me to be a peer mentor. And that was one of my favorite memories because I got to meet all of these new freshmen who were coming to college for the first time. And you know what? Some of them were turds to me, and I probably deserved it. But it was really cool to be able to meet all of these people and to be able to share my experiences. Laura was one of the people that I met through that program. And it was a really great experience to be able to give that support that I had been given the previous year to all of these new freshmen and be a friendly face for people on campus. And that's what I always want to be. I want to be a friendly face for people. So I go back every single year, and I'm on their peer panel. That's what it's called.
Can you talk about a work environment and ways that your coworkers have helped to make your work environment accommodating?
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell a story about my friend Claire. Christina knows where this is going. So does Kelly Jo. I am very fortunate to have my work family that I do have. However, when I first started, I did not do a great job of explaining to every single person that I worked with what exactly I needed from them, just because I was new and I didn't want to rock the boat. It's always a weird transition starting a job. So going into the workforce, kind of to keep that in mind. If you notice a coworker's not really talking when you're talking to them and they might be facing away from you, maybe try to talk when they're looking at you. Because Claire and I opened every single Friday for an entire semester. We didn't speak until the last month. Not for lack of trying. Claire would sit there every single morning and say, "Good morning, Isabelle, how are you doing?" And I would go. Claire thought I was really stuck up. And I just didn't want to talk to her. And apparently I also always had earbuds in. They're sparkly and pink. But yeah, that was a eye-opening experience because I don't always think to tell everyone that I meet, "Hey, I'm hearing impaired. You need to look at me when you're talking," or "Hey, I'm hard of hearing," whatever. So I think that my advice with that is be aware and try to give people the benefit of the doubt when you're meeting them, because Claire and I are best friends now, and I love her. She's great. But even people that I'm meeting in my daily life, a lot of people go months knowing me. And then I make a joke about not being able to hear, and they're like, wait, you can't hear? Because I'm well spoken. And I had that support system growing up, and I learned how to talk before my hearing got too bad, and I learned how to read lips, and I know how to communicate, and I have all of these tools. But that was something that I learned from starting here at the Marquee that was difficult, that I need to keep thinking about that every time I meet someone new, you know? Also, food service, not my field. Not at all. I worked at a pizza place for 3 years. It's hard to hear when there's a lot of things going on. And my boss found out that the only way I would respond is if he used the wrong name. And I don't know if he knows my name now. My name is Bella at Steve's Pizza, but only at Steve's Pizza.
What was your kind of like decisions like when you were like deciding to wear hearing aids instead of like some other options? Like, did you have like did you debate those for a long time, or was it like a pretty?
I was
easy
7,
choice?
so
Well,
I know what
yeah.
you're asking. I know what you're asking. That's actually probably a better question for my parents. I don't really remember. I remember being excited that I was going to be able to hear, and then I got pink hearing aids with silver sparkles. I was going to look just like Galinda, and I hope you all know who that is. There's a lot of debate between discourse within the DHH community when it comes to using assistive technology. I fall into the middle camp that goes, but wait, why can't we just have both? You know? There's the short version is there are some people who believe that you need to embrace being deaf and hard of hearing and not utilize the assistive technology that is available and root yourself in that community. And there are other people who believe that the assistive technology is there to help you and that it's going to help bring the hearing community together with the DHH community. And unfortunately, people get really caught up in that debate and start I've been told before that because I use AT, assistive technology, that I'm not actually deaf or that I'm not actually hard of hearing and that I don't belong to the DHH community because I do utilize these different technologies. I have it's called a Roger Pen. It's a microphone that takes the audio from my professor and puts it directly into my hearing aid. And as I see it is I use it because it helps me, and that's how I grew up. I mean, I was 7 when I got my hearing aids, and that's what I know. But I can't say that if I wasn't raised that way that I'd feel the same way. However, I think that we all need to do what's best for ourselves. And we all need to join together and support one another. And that is the only way that we're going to bridge that gap between the hearing and the non-hearing communities. You also might notice that I use varying terms to describe my different ability. I used to only go by hard of hearing because that is thought to be politically correct by lots of people. However, I found out really quick that people don't take you seriously if you say you're hard of hearing. They're like, that's not as bad as being deaf. So a lot of times I'll either say I'm deaf or I am hearing impaired. And hearing impaired is not widely used in the DHH community because it has a negative connotation with it. But I've found that people take me a little more seriously when I say that. Yeah.
As a theater major, do you have any opinions or thoughts on representation of the DHH community in film or TV?
Last time I did this talk, I was asked about Sound of Metal. I don't know if you guys have seen Sound of Metal. Okay. I'm going to level with you guys here. I think representation is really important, but we have to keep in mind that it's one person's vision. Sound of Metal, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it paints assistive technology in a not great light. It makes it seem like it's not useful, makes it seem like it's actually alienating hard of hearing deaf people from the hearing community. And while that might be one person's experience, that's not everyone's experience. My experiences aren't representative of the entire DHH community. So I think that we need representation, but it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And I think that's the best way that I can put that. Obviously, the question comes up, should hearing actors be able to play deaf or hard of hearing actors? And to that I say, I'm an actor. I get it. Of course, I'd love to be picked for a non-hearing role. But I don't think that we should pass judgment once the casting decisions have been made. Once that movie has been made, I would never want someone to look at me and say, well, you're not hearing. How could you make that role believable? Because I don't think that's what acting's about, personally. So I think the representation matters, and we need to give that chance to those in the DHH community and treat them as our equals and not separate ourselves into camps. Because people who are differently abled want to be included in all of these activities. We are normal people, just like you. Like I said, you might not even know that I'm hearing impaired if you met me. So that's where I stand. That's not, see how I stood when I said stand? I'm a comedian. But yeah, that's my opinion.
How was how is growing up in a rural community with individuals that may or may not have been able to have the experience of interacting with a person in the community?
I made it my life's mission to make sure that every single person in my class knew what I experienced. Every single year, I would have like 30 minutes. They'd be like, okay, go. And I would get to talk to my classmates about my experiences in the DHH community and with my hearing aids and all of that. And that was really important to me. Of course, I would have interactions with people from other schools that wouldn't have that experience, and I was fortunate enough that my classmates stuck up for me like no other. Nobody was allowed to make fun of me except my classmates. That was their philosophy. They would tease me about my red bike helmet. Still do. You should talk to Cameron Pickle over at the Information Center about it. But if anyone said anything, I could count on my classmates to stick up for me in most cases. So I feel like growing up in a rural community actually helped me because I feel like I impacted the lives of those around me and helped them be more empathetic as well.
Could you share a little bit about the discussion you had with staff about lip reading that we had at staff meeting? And the how you learned the different reading people's faces and stuff?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So something interesting that I didn't realize that people didn't think about when you think about lip reading is people are like, well, how do you lip read for someone you don't know? I have to learn. I have to learn your lips and how you form your sentences and all of that. So it takes me a little bit, but I am pretty quick with it. I think the most recent experience that I've had with that would be staff, because I have noticed through the years some people have similar ways of forming words, and then I associate that person with whoever else talks like that. And then that catalog of information that just exists in my brain helps me to learn quicker when I'm learning to read people's lips. And my staff members didn't know that. And they also didn't know that I'm constantly reading everyone's lips because I have mastered the art of making it look like I'm looking you in the eyes, but I'm actually reading your lips. And I'm really proud of that.
So we're in a pretty rural community. And so you get a lot of people here with like a Midwestern accent. Do you ever have it where if you're like someplace else and people have like either a different accent or a different way of speaking, that it's hard to like understand what they're saying if you're like lip reading?
Absolutely not. I think it's actually the opposite because I'm not focusing on what the sound is that's coming out of people's mouths. I'm focusing on the way their mouth moves. And so a lot of times I'll have professors that have, my hearing aid just died. Great timing. Mom, you have a battery? I'll have professors that have some sort of accent, and I actually think I retain more of what they're saying because I'm not focusing on what it sounds like. I'm focusing on how their lips move. That actually led to some discrepancies in the way I say things, though. So the word pretzel and pencil, when you say them, look exactly the same pretty much. And that is something I learned, probably when I got my hearing aids. I also say I don't want to say it because I don't know how to say it. The word jewelry. Yes. You know what I'm talking, I'm wearing it. Jewelry, yeah. Because if you say jury and jewelry, they look the same. To me, at least. Maybe I'm wrong. But, yeah, that's just a little fun fact. My mom always has hearing aid batteries. I don't. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Isabelle, is there any way that we can spread awareness about this coming up?
Absolutely. So that, Dad to the rescue. Now I have both my ears. Yes. So I briefly mentioned this campaign that I started in high school, and that is the Spread the Love campaign. So I am going to ask you guys after this presentation to go out and spread the love, spread the awareness about the DHH community. And the way that we are going to do this is I'm going to ask you guys to post pictures on your social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you're using, and do the I love you sign. This is the I love you sign. Do you want to know why this is the I love you sign? I-L-Y. All three of them. Isn't that cool? I thought that was cool. I didn't find that out until I was like 18. So I'm asking you all to go out and post pictures with the hashtag, what did I say it was? UWP, spread the love. UW-Platt, yes, because of Parkside. So UW-Platt, capital U, capital W, capital P, and then spread the love, capitalize all of those separate words as well. And then in about a week and a half-ish, I'm going to get together with the team from SSWD, and we're going to get all of those pictures together. This is something that's really important to me. I usually do this during the International Week of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, but because it's Disability Awareness Month, we decided to do it now. So I am asking you to go out and do this for me. I want to thank you guys all for coming today, and please urge all of your friends and your families and your classmates to take these photos and post them as well. It would really mean the world to me. If you guys have any further questions or you want to talk about the DHH community or anything like that, feel free to contact me. Like I said, my name is Isabelle Sander. You can find me on the directory, probably. My email is there. Don't text me. That's weird.